All right, well, let's kick off. Before we get started, just a couple of things to tell you before we get going. After our last PMO meetup, which we had a demonstration of ServiceNow PPM here in our office in Ultimo, was a really great session. Thank you to all of you guys who came. A few people said to me on the way out, when's the next one? And I kind of scratched my chin and thought, oh, we're not going to get another one until June, I don't think. And then lo and behold, the safe thing happened, and here we are on a webinar kind of 2 weeks later. The other interesting thing that happened yesterday was I met with a distributor stroke reseller of PlanView. And, you know, I'm on a bit of a mission to highlight various PPM tools through the PMO meetup group mechanism. So tentatively, we've penciled in a date of the 11th of May for our next PMO meetup here in our Sydney office. For those of you in Melbourne, we'll be hosting the PMO Leadership Symposium at the Stamford Plaza on the 18th of May. That's a whole day event, and we've got a really good program lined up. Lots of speakers, some good speakers, lots of networking and conversation opportunities as well. So have a look at the program on the website if you're in Melbourne or keen for a visit to Melbourne, because that will be a really good day as well. So, all right, let's talk SAFe. So firstly, I'd like to introduce you to Neil Creasey. Neil
Hi.
is a SAFe practice consultant, and he runs a lot of large, complex transformations. He's an accredited trainer, and he coaches a dozen or more C-level execs across many large Australian businesses in lean, agile ways. So he's the perfect person to talk us through this latest update to SAFe and take any questions that we might have. So without further ado, Neil, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Louise. And thank you, everyone, for making time out today. As you just heard, we weren't really thinking we were going to get together quite so soon. But last week, a week ago today, there was quite a major announcement from the Scaled Agile Framework team about their new version 6. And we thought that we would basically interface with you guys and give people some pointers to what Scaled Agile is about, what is happening. If you are already someone who's gone through that program, we can give you some quick hints as to what to do to get up to speed. But I really wanted to have an opportunity for a bit of interaction, so not repeating everything you can just go and find on the web. Some little insights onto the things which I think are more applicable from a PMO audience perspective. So before we talk about SAFe 6, I just want to give a very quick overview of the concept of Scaled Agile, not just the Scaled Agile framework, but scaling Agile in general, because that will really bring everyone onto the same page. And I think it will help people understand where the Scaled Agile framework is going with its latest version. Now, the word Agile, a lot of Agile work is synonymous with Scrum teams. And when you think about how Scrum works, you've got a finite sized team who basically will work well together. And when you want a lot more done, instead of getting a bigger team, you get multiple teams. And when you've got several teams, there needs to be some way of coordinating those teams together. And you might be aware of topics like the Scrum of Scrums, where the Scrum Masters get together and coordinate. And the Scaled Agile Framework really just brings that level of coordination to businesses who've got hundreds of people contributing towards the same output. So I guess in old school terms, and I'll use this word carefully, programs of agile work. And the reason I use that word carefully is that one of the things which has happened in SAFe 6 is they've completely eliminated the word program. So we'll talk about that in a moment. And Scaled Agile Framework has got quite an interesting language around it. It talks about something called release trains. And a release train is synonymous with this sort of image. You imagine an engine on a train, and an engine can only pull so many carriages. And in each carriage is a team, like a Scrum team. And so the teams on a train, they can wander up and down the train and talk to each other, and they can communicate. And an agile release train is a team of teams. But the scaling model also allows you to then say, well, what happens if I need more than 12 teams working on the same thing? And the Scaled Agile Framework has a mechanism where you can then have the coordination between multiple Agile release trains. So that's really how it scales. And it's based on the sort of Scrum model, just with a larger time frame and a different set of people to manage those core functions like a Scrum Master would manage the internal looking coordination of a group, and a product owner often manages the outward looking, customer interfacing area of a group. What SAFe also does, it brings a portfolio layer to it. So it looks at how we can actually do the right thing. So connecting the strategy with execution and funding, so that the work which goes on the backlogs of these Agile teams is the most sensible stuff they can be doing at any point in time. So there's a quick overview of SAFe, and I guess whether you change the language, you can change the language from Agile release trains, and those scaling models are applicable for almost any of the other scaling Scrum type models as well, whether we're talking about tribes and villages, or whether we're talking about Scrum teams and Agile release trains. The concepts are quite similar. So SAFe version 6. SAFe version 6 is presented on a website, and we'll share a picture so we can actually have a talk through the picture as we go. And the main site I'm going to go to is called scaledagileFramework.com. Now, I can't share, so Louise, are you able to enable me to share?
I think so. Let's have a look.
Thank you.
Host and panelists. There you go. Have a go at that.
Now that's a bit better. That appears to work now. So let me share a screen. So when you go on the scaledagileFramework.com, this is their very busy picture for SAFe version 6, and what I've just talked about teams, Agile release trains of teams, the coordination of different trains, and a portfolio layer is all depicted in this diagram. What happened last week, though, it was a very important release because it's been 3 years with COVID getting in the way between the last time the Scaled Agile Inc. produced an update. And in great Agile style, they're basically learning on empirical evidence. Let's test what works. Let's get feedback. Let's see which books have been written, which have got good ideas. How can we bring those ideas to bear and fit them into a framework? And when you look around this framework, there's lots of things you will know and do, whether you're operating in an Agile way or not. You probably have got a customer-centric mindset. You might be using design thinking tools. You might be using Scrum and Kanban. And there's many aspects in here which you'll be familiar with. And what these guys do is just see how they can bring a way of having these elements which happen in a business connected together so that you can get a synergistic value out of a lot of the things in the framework. But, if you're learning to ride a bike and you've got stabilizer wheels or trainer wheels, at some point you want to take them off. And we need to really, take these frameworks with a little bit of a pinch of salt and say, well, look, there's things in here to get you started. But then you actually need to mature and pull some of these things out as well. So SAFe itself might get, a lot of comment to say it's a little bit, heavy from an Agile model. But I want to show you some of the things which they've thought about in SAFe 6. Now, the first thing is this concept of business agility. And the concept of business agility really comes from the fact that a lot of businesses have had their Agile work start typically in an IT area of the business. And SAFe is an enterprise model. You can't just have Agile working in one part of the business and expect everything to be humming. You've actually got to recognize that the concept of the agility you're trying to bring needs to be promulgated across the whole of the business. And these are, simple topics like, if you've got Agile teams and you've got Scrum Masters and product owners, you don't want your people and culture area hiring project managers if you need Scrum Masters, or if you've taken time to put your teams into delivering in 2-week time boxes, yet you haven't fully empowered them to make some decisions and they're having to go to a design council who only meet every 2 months. That's not business agility. So business agility is about bringing that mindset across the whole of the business. And SAFe in version 6 have taken great pride in highlighting the practices which are needed and how they're principally led. So we think of guiding principles, the signpost showing us where we need to go through a transformation, to show how all of that can be used to apply the topics which have worked well for software teams where relevant to other teams in business. Now, for those who don't know, the SAFe diagram is fully interactive. You could come and click on business agility, and there's whole articles you can go and have a read about. So I'd encourage you to do that if you're not familiar with this diagram. But business agility, bringing agile ways of working to the whole of the company, is now a major part of SAFe. I mean, it's always been there for many years, but there's been a massive injection of new work about particularly topics of agile architecture, agile procurement. You know, think about if you're working in agile ways and you're getting evolution of your design, you don't want to go to a vendor and have to tell them upfront everything they're going to deliver. So there's some really, really good articles, whether you're using SAFe or not, which you can actually jump in and have a look. And on this page, you know, just down the bottom, a lot of this extended SAFe guidance has articles around that. So certainly, you know, feel free to go and have a look at that sort of stuff. One of the big changes in version 6 is the concept of flow. And we've always had flow as a topic which is important for delivery, but they've actually put flow articles at each level of the SAFe diagram, and they basically have put quite a lot of work into flow. They've developed 8 flow accelerators, which are things like visualize and limiting your work in process, addressing bottlenecks, minimizing handoffs, getting faster feedback, and topics like that to try and make your work flow faster. So there's been a major focus on getting work flowing. In fact, probably I'll just go to a quick picture. I was going to show you something else before, but I've just got a mirror of all sorts of things here. I can show you a little diagram I posted on LinkedIn this week to really just highlight, you know, some of the topics of flow. So hopefully that's rendered and you can see that. If we think of demand and supply, you know, and think about the process we do, we're in one of these areas, and we are receiving work from one or many parties. We are doing what we need to do, and then we're passing it on to one or many parties. And if you've got slow demand and fast supply, then the supply team will run out of work. And if you've got fast demand and slow supply, then the work will pile up. And this concept of flow is about getting the whole system from end to end humming so that work can flow through it in a continuous manner. So a massive focus on flow in this diagram. One of my favorites of what they've done as well, they've researched and provided guidance and input onto some of the modern technologies which are influencing our designs. Now, some of those technologies we're quite familiar with. They've been around for a while now, things like, you know, cloud engineering, which can have impact on, for example, your balance between CapEx and OpEx. If you're no longer actually building your own solutions and you're leasing them, you know, what sort of problems does that pose for a PMO? And they've looked at guidance around how to manage that. They've also looked at the inference of artificial intelligence. And, you know, some of the, you know, the questions which are posed by the way artificial intelligence is going. And we've only got to look at what's happened in the last month with, you know, the massive emergence of people jumping onto things like ChatGPT and getting use of those and creating, you know, creative content through artificial intelligence, through the proliferation of experimental tools on the web at the moment. But it raises questions like, you know, what's the future of requirements? if the systems themselves can change themselves once they're created. It raises questions as well about how do we govern systems which can morph themselves. So there's a whole raft of article under artificial intelligence worth a look. They've got a really good graphical representation of the different types of artificial intelligence and how we need to accommodate that into our thinking when we're using this sort of technology in the solutions we're putting out through our projects and indeed, products we may be delivering. So I think there's some really good information people can jump in and have a look at there. The other one, there's a triage, a triage of these, or the three of these, I should say, triple. There is artificial intelligence, cloud, and the other one is big data. And it's good articles about how big data can now effectively automate a lot of the information we need for governance purposes. And so SAFE have really thought about these emerging technologies. They've looked at how they're going to actually change both the planning landscape, the delivery landscape, and the reporting landscape, and looking at the techniques we have to do from a PMO perspective or a delivery team perspective to actually accommodate that. Finally, for today anyway, is a topic of measures. And many of you may be aware of objective key results. And OKRs have been labeled by some parties as being the agile goals. And there's been a lot of work done on how to get objectivity, which is really important when we're dealing with incremental delivery to prove that the incremental delivery we're doing is actually working and delivering value. Take that objectivity and actually try and verify that we're meeting the objective we've set out by funding, that initiative or by performing that initiative. So there's a great article on applying OKRs specifically to agile working, specifically their place in the scaled Agile framework. And I'm just going to talk a couple of little other things which you might want to jump onto because I think they're quite interesting. And then we'll just see what else people might want to hear about. The roles, when we look at roles which all appear here, if I was to take, say, a product owner role, what SAFE have done in this version under the details of products, they've tried to document through a pictorial they're calling a responsibility wheel, the high-level responsibilities of various roles when they are in a scaled environment. And so they often go beyond what would happen if you've just got maybe one or two standalone Scrum teams. And it's about, reporting up and recognizing that you're in a hierarchy and managing, some of those activities. So that's another thing you can go and have a look at if you're trying to get clarity on, products. I think these make it very clear, it's quite easy to see, on this particular example, 5 responsibilities of a product owner. And then you can have a look at how you might improve in your environment in growing some of those areas. And on the SAFE Big Picture, there is a new article which is relevant to the PMO as well, which we can have a look at through the lean portfolio management area. So I'll just quickly touch on this. Way down the bottom of here is a topic called From PMO to VMO, to the Value Management Office. And there's a lot of focus when we're thinking about flow and we're thinking about iterative delivery towards delivering value, which a customer, be they internal or be they external to your business, will value. And there's a lot of work has been done to recognize that you can deliver a set of features to a product, but not every customer is going to value every one of those features the same. Different customers will have a different utility of value. And there's guidance around how we do enough to satisfy the value propositions for various users and customers. So there's a very quick overview. For those of you who have participated in Scaled Agile before, if you've got any accreditation, when you go to the scaledagileFramework.com, there is a article, What is New in SAFe 6.0? And when you click on that, that will give you an end-to-end view of all of the changes. So the ones I've highlighted here, but everything which has changed. And what I want to point out in this, right down the bottom, is there's been a lot of language change. So one of the things this version has done is really emphasizing that Agile is about product delivery, delivering incremental features rather than project delivery. So there's been an absolute move away from project and program, and you'll see every reference to program has been changed to something different. You know, Agile release train references, program increment has gone to a planning interval. Even the role I have, what used to be a SAFe program consultant, is now a SAFe practice consultant. So they've spent a lot of time, again, learning on empirical activity on what's actually happening and working when you're dealing in an iterative manner and moving to that product-based delivery. So on that topic, let's just see if anyone has any questions. I mean, I've got a few more topics I can talk about, but does anybody have anything they've heard over the last week or any general questions about SAFe or particularly SAFe 6.0?
Everybody should be on mute, but you are now able to speak. So please, if you have questions, please unmute yourselves and ask away, or you can use the Q&A box, which is, we discovered earlier, the chat doesn't work. My bad, because I've forgotten how to use Zoom. But the Q&A section does. So if anybody has any questions. I've got one for you while people are thinking, Neil. Obviously, my kind of area of passion and focus is around PMOs. I was interested to read about the VMO piece in SAFe, and I was also interested to read, you touched on the new piece that's come out from PMI also last week, talking about the XMO.
The XMO, yes.
One of the reasons that I felt compelled to quickly chat to you and set this webinar up is because there seems to be a lot of emotion out there about some of these changes, and the comments are, you know, right across the spectrum, love it or passionately hate it. What are you seeing in practice in terms of SAFe PMOs? Are they PMOs? Are they VMOs? Are they XMOs? What are you seeing on the ground?
Sure. Well, as I answer that, I mean, my observation was that I thought VMO was a bit of a flash in the pan. We saw VMOs come up, about 3 years ago? And there was a number of PMOs, you know, changed their names. And then I thought it had sort of, you know, died a death and gone back to the original, you know, references. Certainly where SAFe are coming from, they recognize that in an agile world, it's not about command and control. It's lightweight governance. It's about disseminating decision-making where it makes sense to teams to try and accelerate delivery. And so they say that the function of a PMO changes, and we need to look at where we're getting value. If you think about, you know, a lot of artifacts in traditional models which deliver once, you know, the artifacts are the evidence that work is taking place towards that outcome. And so, you know, they're proxies really for, you know, measuring the real thing. And in the way we operate from an agile perspective, if you're truly delivering in an incremental style, you can actually measure the real thing. So you don't need many of those proxies. So the level of artifact production is significantly less. What I'm seeing is that, you know, we know that the P in PMO can mean different things to different people. I mean, it can be a project management office just focused on delivery practices. It might be a program office focused on converting the output of projects to the outcome, at a program level, and coordinating how those different projects manage with constrained resources, be they things like dollars or functional things. I have customers who have a test center, and it can only be used by one project at a time, and it limits what you can actually deliver. So what we're seeing in the field is perhaps the P which is growing is the portfolio office. And it is the, the linkage between strategy and execution and funding. And we're seeing a lot of the scaled agile work jump in to that area. Now, scaled agile talk about two things which a lot of people can confuse. One is they used to call it the Agile PMO, which is now the Value Management Office, which is a long-standing element in your business with permanent employees who have responsibility for the operations of a PMO. But they also talk about something called the Lean Agile Center of Excellence. And this is a transient team who might be around for 1-2 years. This is where your agile coaches go. This is where people like myself might go, or if there's a transformation program, it might be run from that area. And I've seen businesses who have set up a Lean Agile Center of Excellence and decided to keep it, and that then becomes part of the PMO running forward. So it depends on what you do. It depends also whether the focus of your work is for people who are consuming internal solutions, or if you're actually producing something which is going to be sold onto the open market. So those are the observations. I don't see the language of VMO being used, but in terms of the functionality and the focus towards value, I see a lot of that.
Yeah, great, thanks. Michael had a question. Michael, would you like to unmute yourself?
Hi, Louise. Hi, Neil.
Hi.
Yeah, this is a topic that's great. I really love this discussion. The value piece in the PMO, right, and quantifying the additional value that PMO team delivers to the organisation. So it's not the value you get from the projects specifically, but it's the incremental value delivered from that team, whether they call it VMO or whatever, that they deliver. Now, I really want to get into this at some stage because I've always struggled with this, and I'll try and explain. For a reasonable team in a PMO to be effective, you're talking about 4, 5+ minimum people. Under that, when you've got 1 or 2 people in a team, there's very little limited that they can do. I could be completely wrong, so happy to be challenged on that. There's a cost to that. So unless you're returning cost times X back to the business, you're not providing value. You're providing disvalue. And this is what I've always struggled with, because organizations that are budget constrained look at a PMO and they go, why are we spending, let's say, $5 million on that function? Give me $5 million and I'll go and do something better that will provide a better return on investment to the business. So I want to drill into it because I'm looking for a better solution when PMOs or VMOs, whatever, are established in an organization, that they can really deliver that incremental value. It's not a consistent struggle to deliver that incremental value. And I know value is different for every organization, but I've always thought, now this is a very long question, I've always thought as the value to the business is improving the probability of success. And that's through either coordination, through governance, through support functions, through a set of services that are established that respond to the need of the business. But that's really difficult to quantify that as a result of the PMO, the organisation is better off. And so then when you get into scale PMO, an agile PMO, really interested in seeing what more we can do in that space. It's a big
Sure,
topic. Sorry, Neil. It's a very big topic, but when you started talking about VPMOs, I got very excited.
Yeah, I think you've raised quite a common set of concerns, which is echoed around, and the key thing when you expose that is that you're saying, well, we're trying to be a value management office, but it's all about cost. But cost and value are different, very different beasts. Sure, cost comes into the equation. And what I see certainly in the agile world and the areas I work in, people recognize that there are tangible values and there are intangible values. So, there's the tangible values of how much did it cost, how long did it take? But there are many intangible values. Were the people treated well on that project? I often hear people say, the fact that this person was a brilliant project manager and really played to his stakeholders well, the fact that that project was, cost more and over budget and took longer, I'd sooner have that than the person who's a bit of an a-hole, in their delivery, who brings it in on time and on budget, because, they've just upset everybody along the way. And what we tend to do when we talk about value, we don't tend to talk about value in dollars. We tend to talk about it as a relative value number, which is all encompassing, so we can accommodate the soft aspects and the hard aspects of value. And we tend to say to parties that, here's the list of things we're doing in a given time box, and maybe a 3-month period. Which do you value the most? Call that a 10 and relatively value everything else accordingly. Now, and then you come and measure it when we show you what we've done, and you tell us, if your 10 had an expectation in your mind and we met that expectation, then we get 10. If we haven't quite got there, you might give us an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. And I think there are some very interesting ways of how to move away from just thinking about cost in the concept of what value is. And I don't have the absolute quote now, but a lot of research I was doing last year was actually highlighting that soft values are way more important than hard values, in the scheme of things. When you look at, where businesses truly value people and value their brand and value, the kudos and a trusting environment, those values of a company tend to connect with how value is delivered by that company. So some comments there. I don't know whether that's helped you in any way, and whether Louise has got anything to add to that interesting topic.
It's a area of extreme interest for me as well. And I was given a little wry smile when you were saying you'd rather the nice person deliver late and the a-hole deliver on time. You'd prefer not to work with, because I think it takes real bravery at a leadership team level to put culture before cost. And, I've got to say, and it might be indicative of the types of customers we work with, who are government departments of all levels, of ASX listed companies, but most leadership teams that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, and I know you're dealing in there's some overlap, I think, in what you've been doing recently, Neil, and what we're doing for the most part. But we see those cost and time outcomes more often than not trumping cultural soft issues. So is it a precondition of success using a scaled agile framework then that culture has to be the right culture, I guess, is my comment stroke question.
Let me respond to something we do caution people about very early on in businesses thinking about transformation. We say you've got to be transparent and honest with yourself, because if you've got something which is good and you scale it, it will go to great. If you've got something which is poor and you scale it, it will go to terrible. And so you've got to actually get your own house in order. And a lot of this is the mindset about what is really important to your business. And I'm just going to share a slide on the topic of, cost versus value. Now, this is very applicable if you're in the market to actually, is that come up? Because I didn't have my green screen. Oh, there it is. If you're in the market of selling to external customers, so people who buy product from you rather than internal consumers, what I often see is that if there is, again, an agile team of a fixed size, so team A are really good at something, and there's a piece of work which is going to take team A more than one of their time boxes to achieve. Team B are out there, they've got a similar skill set, they're not quite as good. It's going to take team B a bit longer to deliver. And what I see a lot of businesses do is now, it's a cost-driven decision. It's cheaper to do it with team A. But now you're delaying when you get to market. You're making your customer wait. They may jump to a different supplier. You're not developing your other teams. You're increasing your risk. You're delaying your feedback because you're not going to know whether it works or not till you've got it in the market. And we talk about the value-driven mindset. We say, look, you can put team A and team B on. Yes, in reality, it's going to cost 10% extra in cost, but you're in the market 40% quicker. You're developing team B. You're lowering your risk. You're getting all of this feedback. And so a lot of what we see is to try and drive the mindset change towards value. And a lot of businesses talk about putting the customer at the center of everything. And this is a safe picture around that on business agility. When you put the customer at the center of everything, what you're effectively doing is thinking, working, deciding on the way the customer is going to be responding. And that is the value mindset. So there's elements in everything we see. And I think it's very applicable in an agile world because we're looking for fast feedback. And if we've got these concepts of a brand new product's going out there, there's going to be a minimum feature set to make it viable for people to buy. And then if it looks good and we're getting feedback, we're going to add additional features to that to hopefully attract more people to our product. So there's absolute value mindset at the heart of what happens in the SAFE framework.
Yeah, great. We've probably got time for one more question here. We've got one in the QA chat. SAFE as a scaling framework is heavily prescriptive. Do you think that these changes will make it more competitive or make it harder for enterprises to implement? Also, do you think it's worth investing in further certifications, which I think is a great question as well?
Sure. Well, let's answer the last bit first, because that's quite easy. If you are a person who has an accreditation in SAFE, one of the things which has happened is that there used to be something called the SAFE community environment. The member login area is now called SAFE Studio. When you log into there, you can actually do a bridging course for free, and all of your accreditations will be updated. So there's no cost to update as long as you're current, okay? So certainly the last part of that question, go and get that, because there is value in learning what SAFE is putting out there in terms of new ideas. And just the AI stuff alone, I think you'll find quite amazing, just reading all of that information. So I'd advocate that. If you've done SAFE 5 or a SAFE 4.5 in the last 4 or 5 years, there are new topics in here, there's a new focus, but it's all backward compatible. So you're not going to have a total set of new learnings. The new learning stuff might be another 15-20% over what you'd learned a while ago. It's just built up. So
I'm 4.5, Neil. Would I have to pay something to upgrade?
Yes,
to 6 now?
So you can only do the free upgrade if you've done 5.1.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are ways you can bridge from 5.0 to 5.1 and then jump that way if you're already accredited.
Yeah. Okay.
But the comment that SAFE is heavily prescriptive is something we hear often. There's a lot in the SAFE diagram. You look at all of this, but what a lot of people do is they look at this essential SAFE. It is a scalable model, and at its simplest area, there are about 10 things you need to do to say you're doing SAFE. And all of those are very sensible. And I would argue that it isn't prescriptive. I mean, there's been a move away from Scrum to something called Safe Scrum. because people kept saying that's not how Scrum does it. Well, maybe Scrum was being too prescriptive. In SAFe, we're saying, you know, there's a mechanism here, there's a role. It might be called a Scrum Master or team coach. Looking inward, there's a role looking outward. Whether you're running Kanban or Scrum, you still need those types of functions. And if we can manage that in a sensible manner, we can actually start to coordinate folks together. The prescriptiveness might be that true agilists would say it's telling us how to do things, which, you know, if you get really, really good at Agile, you need to be able to decide how to do that yourself. And it's like scaffolding. You put scaffolding up, it's a framework, you build, you go through your transformation, then you need to start to take some of that scaffolding down. You need to then modify once you've learned and got something in to the nuances of your own business. So these are going to make more competitive advantage when you think about technology of big data, cloud, and AI. It definitely gives you insight. The other stuff which happened in SAFe 5, which a lot of people still haven't jumped on, is there was some really good books called Team Topology by Skelton and Pace. And they talked about how there are many different types of teams. And you need to know what type of team you are in order to work best. So there's been a lot of guidance, which even from 3 years ago in SAFe 5 has not been adopted in business at the moment. So definitely those parties who listen to this and start to bring that on board are going to be more competitive in this changing world of artificial intelligence, just because it's giving us the guidance. But it comes from books. They didn't invent this. They've just read a lot of material and they've packaged it up saying this is how you can now include it in a framework like SAFe. Yeah,
perfect. Thanks, Neil. We did say we'd go for 45 minutes, so we are just about out of time, conscious that it's the middle of the afternoon and we just wanted to squeeze this in while the topic was still hot. So if you do have any follow-up questions, please feel free to send them to me. We'll do a mail out with a copy of the recording of this session. And please feel free to connect with Neil directly on LinkedIn. And yes, thank you for attending, and we'll see you at a PMO meetup soon. Thanks, folks.
Thank you, everybody.